Hello and welcome to Behind the Game podcast. Today we are talking to Johan Eile. He is a co-founder, investor, board member, and has extensive background in the gaming industry. You've worked on so many different styles of games, mobile, sport games, IP games, all these different things. Have you seen any games that always perform better? Like, do you have any game you prefer to work on, mobile versus PC, fighter? What is your favorite style of game to play and work on?
I think from my own perspective, and I'll put this more into a market thing. Over the last few years, been promoting what we call platform agnostic games. I think that's been the sweet spot. Be able to play on PC and mobile, for example, in the same session and stuff like that. I think it's really fun. And it doesn't really matter what the experience is. The idea of being able to play on the web, mobile, PC, console in the same session is that's where at least I think the future is. And I, at least with my former team, we've been very close to that experience. On a personal note, I do play a lot of sports games as well, but I also refinding some classics. I just bought. I don't know if you guys saw this. They did the remake of the Atari 2600 with an HDMI cable. So. And I literally was just gifted what's supposed to be the worst game in history. I got like the ET game for the Atari 2600. So I'm pretty excited about the right now.
Yeah, retro never dies.
No, retro never dies. Like this is
yeah.
Cool.
I love retro, man. I was in Japan last year, and I don't know if you know this store called Super Potato. They have all the retro games that you can imagine in an amazing quality. Obviously, all of them are in the Japanese version. But I grew up with the Super Nintendo, and and that's why I'm still being a Nintendo fan. That's why it's also interesting in the sense of the cross platforms. How do you see Nintendo opening up a little bit more and getting into other platforms and getting their game into other consoles?
What I love about Nintendo is that the quality bar is so high, and I think they feel that that's the sort of North Star around all their IPs. And even in the way how the company behaves and stuff like that, tons of respect for call it the ways of working inside of Nintendo, and I think we have a lot to learn too on how they manage and treat the IP and the IPs they work on. And so that's probably one thing. I am quite interested in seeing them, for example, on mobile. And you look at a game like Dragalia Lost, which in any normal standards it was quite successful. The live ops of that game was very good. They're able to 4 or 5x their revenue or their ARPD out during live ops events, and then to actually see them pull the game, I think they probably generate over $200 million with the title. And I just think it just speaks to the sort of quality bar that they want to be in and how they want to play. So I'm probably just as interested as you guys and curious about what they end up doing. And I just think I think the guiding light for them is just that the quality bar needs to be and the experience needs to be at such a high level.
I was super surprised with Mario Bros. Wonder last year. Like, for real, I didn't expect it so good. And then I read about it and it was like, okay, they didn't have hard deadlines. The budget wasn't unlimited, but it was a really nice budget where they could be less pressure, let's put it in this way, and they will have a lot of time to think about, to come with creative ideas. And then you could see after 5 minutes of gameplay, you will have like 15 different new mechanics. and even coming out in October, it was a strong candidate for Game of the Year, right? Which probably, even I'm a huge Nintendo fan, I didn't expect it that good.
Yeah, no, there's something I've thought a lot about over the years, like just the difference in how they build games, and we see this in a lot of Japanese companies. Actually, like they're just built very, methodically, and more like I think the comparison is like they're built like tanks, right? Like the high quality products, and maybe not as flexible and scalable in many ways as what we're used to, at least not in like free to play, mobile and PC, but in it from the West. But very impressive on just the sort of like rigidity that they launch these games with.
I would love for some games to start coming to PC. I'm a PC gamer, and I don't like playing like handheld, so I don't play as much Nintendo as I would like to. But so it'd be awesome to start seeing it come to other, consoles. But I see that they might not do that. I don't know. We'll see, but I hope so.
We play a lot of Mario Kart at home. That's my go-to Nintendo. Obviously, has let's do with having kids and stuff. But I think it's like it'd be hard to have that experience. If I look at like graduating through like racing games, for example, started off with like Need for Speed, right on the first PlayStation, and just like kind of moving up. Now I'm kind of back to a fairly simplistic game again, but with an incredible control, and the dexterity of it is just like a phenomenal experience. I haven't found that on mobile yet, as an example. Like not to say there's a lot of good racing games, but not to the point where I'm like you're so into it and so immersed that you have the same experience.
Right. There's a few spinoffs of like Mario Kart, like I think Kart Riders. I'm not sure if you've played it, but I've played with my friends. It's not as good. Obviously, I don't think anything will ever beat Mario Kart, but it's enough to where, I have fun with my online friends.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of. It's more like I'm thinking about this. Like the Switch it's a game changer, right? Like it's just so different from the other consoles, and like we made a game called Dungeon Stars for the Switch. And I think we had a lot of fun just figuring out, like going from mobile and PC, trying to figure out the controls, trying to figure out like how we use this in the best possible way. With the thought of it being a cross-platform game, like now it didn't get the attention maybe that it should have gotten, but it was a fun experience and sort of like call it a check mark to say like, okay, we have a game on the Switch.
I see you also board member with Trophy Games, which are really close friends to us, especially Frederick and Rasmus and Soren. So, but how did you meet with them a lot, or?
Yeah, well, I've been supporting Trophy through a friend, and got introduced to him through their CFO Mariana, who's a really close family friend. I worked with Mariana at THQ and Ubisoft before, so the initial part of that journey was actually very simple. It was just sharing experiences and discussing with Søren on a very very casual level. And then when I finished up with Kabam and Netmarble last year, sort of a natural to see what else we can do together and be involved in a more structured way. Obviously, sharing the sort of benefit of going to different events. I just got to spend a little bit of time with Frederick and Søren at Pocket Gamer, for example, in London. So that was great, and that is, it's just now with technology too. It's like we're maintaining an ongoing, almost daily conversation on.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Right? They're really nice people. I'm happy you work together, guys. It's amazing. But how with all this journey you decide to found Smulton and get more into funding, and what was in your mind at that moment to say, okay, I'm gonna I got an amazing experience. Why not another challenge instead of going easy?
The journey is actually quite simple. Like if I look at from the experience at helping start THQ in Montreal to the company going through difficulties and kind of got bought through the studio here in Montreal got bought by Ubisoft in an asset sale. Spending some time at Ubisoft. Ubisoft is still one of my favorite companies. I really enjoyed working there. Enjoyed the people and the way the company's set up. Is just like 100% about creatives and taking big creative risks, and I really like that. And then I've actually spent like the last 8 years running a startup, right? And then obviously we had the benefit of selling the company, but more or less like kind of like 3 big journeys inside of a longer period. Everything else on that has been related to like how do you contribute to other people's journey, and that's where a lot of the advisory is, a lot of the investments that we've done over the years, both as sort of a group of other founders or together with my wife here on sort of our own personal investments into other startups, and a lot of that is just pure interest driven, super high risk, high reward type of stuff, and there are people in that journey that sort of are recurring. And when Kim Nordstrom, who I started Smulton Ventures with, is one of those guys that we've sort of been circling around this for quite some time, and we've been doing a bunch of projects together, but in parallel. And then we simply decided, let's put it all together. So it's just a small fund that we're investing from. We've done a couple of small projects last year, and we're still investing some smaller stuff this year. The whole idea is to be kind of first money in, obviously being able to provide value on to the founders, both in terms of like things to think about, things to do as a founder, CEO, but also on the networking side, and just be able to connect the dots and stuff like that. So and obviously super fun. One of my really best friends. So a lot of fun working with Kim. And if you haven't had a chance,
I was going to say I need to put my hands on Up Down Up, but I'm coming back to Spain this weekend, so I'm gonna order it to get it there, because here it takes like 15 days. But yeah, I saw the trend on LinkedIn is being crazy. Like everyone is posting a picture with the book.
I worked hard on worked hard on that. So that was a big part of last year for me, was to support Kim in the book. Been at it for almost 2 years, and so a lot of the ideas around what we see in the industry and what we've seen over the last 15 or so years, like are actually reflected in there, and be able to give people a good kind of, it's not necessarily a blueprint, but just things to think about, and like be aware that these are like steps in a way that people go through and companies go through. Once you can kind of recognize those patterns, I think it gives you a little bit of a head start on how to react and what to do next, and stuff like that.
It's high level that you can learn a lot actually from that book, and you can put it in practice. Like it's really nice to see how you do it, and in this industry, especially in these hard times, it's nice to see how everyone comes together to help each other. And I think this book is something that for many people who might be struggling and they have the studio, or they want to figure out or get advice from the best ones, sometimes it's difficult to get a call, sometimes it's difficult to reach out, but getting this book is like the perfect guide to better understand the situation and try to use some of the advice. So it's amazing what you do, guys.
Yeah, no, it really is a bit of a part of this of a keychain in many ways on how to unlock the next step. But I think Kim's goal in all of this is just to be able to share about the different stages that the companies go through, and like there's been 100 companies before you that have gone through this, and there are ways to adapt the way you're working, adapt your principles and behaviors, and put yourself sort of pivot back to growth, so to speak. And especially today with the state of the industry, I think there's a lot of opportunities to just kind of apply some of the learnings from Kim's book. Obviously we try to practice what we preach as well. So it's been a great reference point in even the daily work that I do today. Always lots of opportunities to go back and say, well, actually Kim talked to Ilkka at Supercell. They've gone through a similar experience. Here's what they did. I just think it's super valuable.
What will be your personal advice or takeaway that you will give to some studio that is starting to grow? Let's say they're getting a good momentum, right?
It's tricky. I think one of the things that we see consistently is like people hire too fast. That's probably like we see people with success and they might not have built the systems in their games so they scale properly. I think that's one of the things that Kim talks about a lot in the book is like don't hire too fast. And if I look at my own contribution on that, like we spent a tremendous amount of time when we built Repost Games around hiring a talent. Really, there's like Montreal. There's an amazing environment for developers. We could easily double or triple the size in a short period of time, but opted against it by sort of having a very religious structured hiring process and being very picky. Even when we were doing super well, it was sort of like, and you don't think about it at the time that you're not trying to limit like the downfall or anything like that. It's more like if you build it around these people that subscribe to the same behaviors and the same values and the same principles, like your chance of success is just much higher.
Yeah, we've seen especially in COVID that because of the demand, many people started to non-stop hiring during 1-2 years, especially with all this boom of the hypercasual in 2020, 2019, then COVID hit, then hiring people, and then all of a sudden we've been struggling the past year. Do you think it comes because of that same mistake, or it's more something that it had to be done for the sake of keeping up or of what the people and the players wanted?
COVID is an extraordinary event in all this, and I think we all made a lot of mistakes. We initially we made some sort of estimates based on the impact and stuff like that. Like one of the advantages that specifically our group had was that we launched Shop Titans in China like the day they went into lockdown, and we benefited tremendously from that. Like you go back and you look at the top grossing charts in the region, and it's like a couple of Supercell games, and then it's us. Run by I think at the time we're like 20 people in Montreal. So benefited a lot, but we also saw some of it coming. So we were pretty prepared for the lockdown. Obviously, what we did not prepare for was like the impact it would have on people sitting at home. Like we're quite social creatures, right? So being able to shift the whole operating model to working from home was quite hard. And I remember sharing with Tim Fields, who was the CEO of Kabam at the time, and an incredible product guy. Like, what's the loss of velocity? And like, we're kind of speculating. Like, the initial estimate was like, we're going to lose like 30% on like new products. Like existing products were kind of on rails. And I think in hindsight, we're probably way over 50% productivity loss just from not being built to work from home and not necessarily having all the right tools and the ways of working set up for that. I think the adjustment that needed to happen after we doubled, I think we even tripled over those kind of 2 years in size, but it was largely demand driven. So we were almost always behind on the hiring. Again, very purposely done. So I don't think in our particular case we had the necessarily pressure, but I know a lot of companies thought about it as something that would go on in the infinite, and that the growth from the games would go on in and that's like, in a way, from a company point of view, I don't think that's really, you can't really defend that.
That's really interesting. Do you still work from home, or did you go back to in person?
My personally, right now as a sort of advisor and consultant, I end up working quite a bit from home. But every chance I get, like I'll jump into the office of whoever I'm working with. Um, there's a lot of ideas that kind of matured during COVID really quickly. I think if you build your company around the idea of working from home and working remotely, I think that's great. If that works for you, awesome. Like our experience so far has been a little tricky to get like the creative ideas going the way they should, and especially for me, like I'm the worst artist and the worst programmer on any team, like by far. Like I can make games on Roblox. That's my limitation. So then when working, call it in a producer role or an executive producer role, working remotely with these incredibly talented people, it's very, very, very difficult. Again, like some people can do it, and my guess is that most people are struggling with it, and like we're seeing the consequences of that right now.
I do kind of want to jump back to the investing because I think this could be really interesting. If I was a game studio and I was getting ready to pitch my game looking for an investor, do you have any, red flags that I should definitely not put in to the pitch, or any, ideas or something that I would really grab your attention?
We talk a lot about and going back to some of the stuff the work I do with Kim. Like when we meet founders, we talk a lot about the how. We want to know how we were going to build the game. Like I think the one of the most overlooked aspects of these pitches is like okay, that's great. You were a product lead at Riot, or you were an engineer there, and you did this, and you worked at Ubisoft, etc. Like you've been a small part in a big wheel, and we tons of respect for your accomplishments. It's a completely different story when you're asked to build the product from A to Z by yourself, and kind of how you're planning to put that together. So that's something that we look for very early in a pitch. I want to know how. Like, great, love your experience, background's fantastic. How do you propose to do this? I think we used to be very focused on the founding team and the founders and who they were and like their track record and stuff like that. And, I think it got diluted a little bit. There's probably a lot of different views. There's probably some VCs that still invest based on that thesis. But if I look at like what Kim and I talk about a lot, it's the how. Like you can have an amazing founding team, but if we're not sure how they're going to put the product together, it's or the product and service in many cases will raise some red flags.
Right. If I didn't have any experience, I didn't work for Riot, I didn't have all this stuff, but I was really passionate and I had the how and I had all of these details and I had this really great idea, would you still be interested in funding this game?
Yeah. I think if you're able to articulate how you're going to put it together, I think there's nothing that stops that process. I think one of the big caveats I should mention, or at least on my end, like we've always been extremely open to hire junior talent. Like it's been like part of the sort of mandate that we gave ourselves in our previous company. It changed a little bit when we were acquired and not necessarily have the same philosophy, but just being able to support younger up and coming people was a big part of the sort of reason for running a company. So I think there's quite a lot of time spent today with first time founders, for example. I've personally invested in some games where these are very little experience from the past, and but you can tell that they have the chops to put it together and the call it the ambition to actually like go through all the hoops regardless. And that's the type of stuff we look at. Again, not to pump the book too much, but we talk a lot about ambition. Like, what is the ambition of what you want to do? And so you can be super young, junior, if you have an ambition, and we see that you're demonstrating all the all the things that we look for.
It's like if you have the balls, the guts, right, to go for it and do it, right, and get everything, it's worth it. But
there's some security in numbers, by the way, in this. So a guy like Joachim Akron's at Elite Game Developers, he's done these syndicates for quite some while, and very often that we all go together and put a little bit of money in to make these things happen. I forget what the number is, but he's probably in the 25 to 30 companies that have received funding, and a lot of them are fairly, like, they're not that senior, and I think it's a great model for, it might be difficult for somebody to go in with a substantial amount of money, but if we do that, this sort of syndication, there's a little bit of support for the industry in that sense.
Sometimes what I feel like, for example, I'm from Spain, right? And I see many big companies coming, and the young talent is like, I feel they kind of struggle if they don't go to they either want to go to a super big company because they're a little bit afraid of starting something by themselves. And then you see all the big ones in Barcelona, in Madrid, and they're like, oh, we want to do that. But then we start losing like talent on creating our own studios. And then if you create it, you see the big companies acquiring the smaller studios, and it's like I feel like these type of people should be protected at any cost because they start with this inspiration, right? They want to do something by themselves, but sometimes it's good to have the big ones, but not to eat you, more to support you, to do some funding, to have you under their wing, but not in a way they acquire you, right? But mentorship or as you do, guys, something that can give you enough advice to create something by yourself. Because I see many of these young talent, and they have the motivation, they have everything, and sometimes when they see the reality, they're like, okay, I'm just gonna try to get into, I don't know, Ubisoft Barcelona. Now that you mentioned Ubisoft, or 2K in Madrid, or like that happens a lot in Spain, and I would like to know what your take also, because all the studios that we've been seeing being acquired this past year, and most of them is not the same when you're 50 and you have to fire 40 than when you're 10,000 and you have to close 50. It's like, okay, it's just a number, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, super interesting topic. Something very. One of the, call it, achievements, if I put it that way, at Ubisoft was sort of part of creating the sort of outreach to indies at the time. What started off as sort of like the idea around the corporate venture model has morphed into what's an indie competition today, where I think the winner gets 50. I think it's 50K. I mean, it evolved a lot since I left, but that was one of the fundamental responsibilities of these big studios in an ecosystem, is to support younger talent, right? And like try to figure out a way to not put up like a walled garden around what you do as a company. So if there is somebody who wants to start, let's say they want to leave Ubisoft to start a company, like, why isn't Ubisoft the first money in, as opposed to like trying to put up some sort of protection against them leaving, right? It's a bit of a tricky concept for some companies, but it's based on the premise that you can't really stop people from doing these things, and in a way you kind of need it. And we used to even be at the point with Reposcape where we would be super proud when some of our employees would get poached and go and work for Ubisoft. That was like a big sort of like credibility check for us, right? Like we're now staffing like the best company in the industry. So it's like a full circle almost. But a lot of that comes back to like, ecosystem development, how the government sees it, the type of resources they make available, and to encourage it. And again, super, super happy to talk about like how the companies should think about it in a way that becomes very empowering for the people.
When should studios start really marketing? Like, obviously, sooner the better, but like really when in your experience should they get into social media, live ops events, and all of that fun stuff?
Good question. I think the best way that I can explain this, at least from my perspective, is we went through this period where we could get away with what we call simple user acquisition arbitrage, CPI LTV. That was like in free to play mobile. That worked for a long time. Now we were making games that were more on the core, mid core, and kind of nerd core side during this period. So the CPI was astronomically high, and there weren't that many players in that pool of people to buy. So that kind of forced us into being more complete players in the traditional sense. So, we'd go to PAX and promote our games. Like we'd go and try to do some trade shows and stuff like that. That was more on the traditional publishing side. And as we progress, that's become even more important today. Like you have to do all the right things. You have to be a more complete player. You can no longer just do the UA arbitrage. And it goes for small companies and big companies. We see it in some of the biggest companies in the world working with today. They can't do it anymore. Like you have to build a super aggressive pre-registration campaign. You need a sophisticated CRM to be able to manage your players, be able to cross promote, and a lot of that comes back to like kind of like very simple old school marketing. Like you have to be able to position yourself in the right way. You have to be able to know your audience the right way. And these are tricky things, like especially when you're in pre-launch, right? Like, and you have a limited budget as well. And that's what we see one of the biggest mistakes companies do, right? Like they have a nice development budget. And if they're lucky, they're able to get the funding for that. And then there's like a little tiny chunk left for marketing and promotion.
I agree. I think everyone needs a bigger marketing budget, but maybe that's a little bias. Yeah.
I think the work starts earlier, and the work is much more about community building, much more about the feedback loop. Even when you have no data, is to go back and start building on those building the right. This is something I talk a lot about. It's like building the right reflexes as a publisher, especially if you're self-publishing. Like it's a big thing. And when you're looking at working with a publisher today, you kind of want to almost do a speed check on what it is that they're proposing to do for you when you're going to bring the game to market. Like a lot of it is driven by algorithms on the different platforms. Important to understand what triggers them and quote unquote game the system a little bit as well, right?
One last question. If you could go back in time, have a time machine, and you could give yourself a cheat code to your like overall career that would maybe set you apart or maybe even advance you faster, what would it be?
When we were starting the company, like I'd come home at like quite late. You'd work quite a lot. Now, I don't think all of that was particularly focused, and as a consequence, your family end up suffering. So for me, working from home, that was a lifesaver in that sense. You get to spend time with your kids, and you end up being a little more focused. So if there's a cheat code in that, it would be to sort of prioritize family and then try to find a way to focus your energy a little differently. It is very hard when you're the CEO or a founder because you're absorbed by what you do, and I kind of by default get into that the way today. But I wish I would have had the tools to kind of balance that a little bit better when I was younger. I think you can just be so much more effective if you get the right ways of working early. And again, I don't want to pump the book. Kim talks about that in the book quite a lot about like getting the right principles, getting the right behaviors, making sure that your team shares those, that social fabric, right? Like super important.
Very cool. Again, thank you so much for being
we'll have
here.
To get the hands.
Yeah, I do. I need to read the book as well, especially as how much you talked about it. Sounds really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I'll apologize for that. That's part of the of the spiel right now, anyways.
No, it was amazing. It was the perfect time, actually. Like for real, it's been a whole trend, and it's amazing. And we really appreciate you got some insights from the book, and to have you here. It's been amazing. You will be always welcome if you want to come back, because it feels like we didn't talk enough. But
if it speaks for anything, Yoda One and Henry's been I've been a big fan of for quite some time, and had opportunity to chat with both him and some of your I guess colleagues from way past. So tons of kudos for running a good company.
Well, I will pass that along to him.
Thank
Yeah, that was very nice of you to say. But yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. If you happen to be at GDC, maybe we can, grab lunch or something of the sorts. Isma and I will both be there. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and all of that good stuff. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching and listening. Make sure to follow along for future episodes and like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you again soon.